many of the demands of the Trump administration are utterly preposterous, such as having a government committee decide whether each department has the range of viewpoints that they want, and if not, forcing upon Harvard a critical mass of people with the viewpoints that the government approves of. I mean, that is not only an unconstitutional and preposterous infringement on a private institution, but it would open the door to all kinds of repression and mischief, such as installing people who deny the 2020 election results in the history department, installing creationists in the biology department, anti-vaxxers in the medical school. You can't have a university where the government is deciding what the range of viewpoints is that can be taught and researched.
First, we will go to the United States, where a federal judge has halted President Trump's attempts to block international students from attending America's oldest university. The move came just hours after Harvard sued the Trump administration, calling its decision to bar foreign students unconstitutional. It is just the latest clash between the White House and American higher institutions. Some have crumbled, one or two have resisted. Let's discuss this with Steven Pinker, Professor of Psychology at Harvard University. Professor, hello, welcome to the program.
Hello, thank you.
First of all, what is this doing to the psychology of people both working at Harvard as academics like you and those people attending it hoping to make their way in the world?
Oh, the reaction is shock, anger, grief, incredulity. Something like a quarter of our students come from other countries. And not only will this turn their lives upside down, but it will wrench Harvard. The international students are in our labs, they're in our classrooms, they're in our student associations. We like to think that we bring in the smartest people from all over the world. And history shows that many of them either go back to their own country with what they gained at Harvard or stay in the United States and found companies and become CEOs, or in my case, as a Canadian who went to Harvard and pretty much never left, stay and we like to think add to the country.
Right. And how do you read the ruling from U.S. District Judge Alison Burroughs? She's an Obama appointee, and she's issued a temporary restraining order, and that freezes the Department of Homeland Security's move for 2 weeks. Is it a temporary reprieve, or is it possibly a turning point in this battle between Harvard and the Trump administration?
Tremendous open question, and I think legally Harvard is on very secure grounds that the administration is clearly just trying to use the apparatus of the government to punish Harvard. They don't have any legal basis for what they're doing. But whether, unfortunately, with the Trump administration putting pressure on the courts and on law firms, it's quite possibly that we could have an abrogation of clear rule of law. That's, I think, what strikes terror in the heart of many Americans nowadays. But certainly, as far as I can tell, the law is on Harvard's side.
Right. And we're talking about nearly 7,000 foreign students who pay far more than the average $60,000 a year for tuition fees. How crucial are they to both the finances and to the cultural life of Harvard University?
Well, I think the finances should not be a reason one way or another, but they make a tremendous contribution to the life of the university. For one thing, to be an educated person, you got to know something about the rest of the world. And what better way to know about the rest of the world, especially if you're 19 years old, than to talk to people from the rest of the world. But not just 19 years old. At any age, there's much to be learned from people from other countries. And contrary to the claim by the Trump administration that these are terrorists, they're violent demonstrators. They are some of our students who are most outspoken against restrictions of speech, restrictions of political correctness. They are not particularly woke. They are independent-minded, brilliant people. That's why we selected them in the first place. And it would be ripping the heart out of the university to expel all of anyone who wasn't born in the United States.
Yep. And nonetheless, you have yourself admitted that in your 22 years as a Harvard professor, you haven't been afraid to bite the hand that feeds you. You've written this essay in the New York Times, and you've referred to other contributions you've made. You've talked about The Trouble with Harvard, which you wrote in 2014, and then a couple of years ago, your 5-point plan to save Harvard from itself. And you've recommended a range of things that some of the Trumpists would say, well, he's on message. Why is he complaining? He agrees we need to dismantle DEI and some of the wokery that we're now waging war on.
Well, yeah. So as I put in my article, if you're standing in a downpour and Trump tells you to put up an umbrella, you don't refuse just to spite him. But what the Trump administration is trying to do is, first of all, cripple Harvard by removing funding for research projects done by our chemists and our physicists and our engineers and our cancer researchers. So whatever problems Harvard has, defunding its research is not going to solve them. Also, many of the demands of the Trump administration are utterly preposterous, such as having a government committee decide whether each department has the range of viewpoints that they want, and if not, forcing upon Harvard a critical mass of people with the viewpoints that the government approves of. I mean, that is not only an unconstitutional and preposterous infringement on a private institution, but it would open the door to all kinds of repression and mischief, such as installing people who deny the 2020 election results in the history department, installing creationists in the biology department, anti-vaxxers in the medical school. You can't have a university where the government is deciding what the range of viewpoints is that can be taught and researched.
Where do you think this battle is going to go? And wouldn't Harvard's fight be made easier, or wouldn't they have more heft if some of the other elite colleges that the Trump administration is targeting were standing up as you are instead of crumbling as one or two have?
Yes, certainly. Although none of the other universities have faced the list of demands that was served to Harvard. Even Columbia, which did accept some of the conditions, but the conditions that were imposed on Columbia were far more reasonable. But yes, it certainly would. It probably would be more effective if universities stood together. What will happen is so difficult to predict. We are really in uncharted waters. This has never happened before in the history of the country, where the government has made a concerted effort to cripple civil society organizations that could serve as a center or a locus for people to differ from the government.
And Professor, as an academic who has been teaching at Harvard for 22 years, and you say in your article today you've not experienced any anti-Semitism in your time there. How do you feel about the Trump administration and the Homeland Security Director, Kirstie Noem, using anti-Semitism as a stick with which to beat your institution with?
Well, it's obviously a pretext. I mean, Donald Trump has had at the White House Holocaust deniers and Nazi sympathizers, and I don't know of a single Jewish student or professor or member of the community who thinks that it's a good idea to fight anti-Semitism by defunding cancer research. Quite the contrary. For one thing, it's obviously hurting the Jewish scientists and students who are hoping for a career in science, but also it's telling all the non-Jewish scientists and students, we are going to destroy your research, destroy your careers in order to advance Jewish interests. That's something that Jewish people do not want. It doesn't do us any good.
And what of the activism, the pro-Palestinian activism that was witnessed on campuses and up and down the country, and which caused some Jewish students to say, well, we feel afraid. There is Jew hate and the universities are not taking it seriously enough?
Well, I think that the university did not take seriously enough the protests that turned into disruption and intimidation. I think that the rules on the books that you can hold a sign, yeah, but you can't eject a dean from his office. You can't invade a classroom with bullhorns. You can't prevent Jewish students from walking across a campus space. They should have been more resolute in enforcing those rules, absolutely. Also, there were abuses like teaching assistants who would dismiss a class section so they could attend an anti-Israel protest, or another teaching assistant who told one student that if he didn't want to work with an Israeli student, he didn't have to. These were clearly abuses. They went against the regulations and they should have been enforced. The university certainly has woken up to this, and our president, Alan Garber, has centralized discipline, has laid out the boundaries of legitimate protest, and has investigated some of the centers at Harvard that were just centers for anti-Israel agitation. We have like 400 centers and programs, and some of them have gone rogue. It's important that they be subject to faculty and decadal supervision, and that is starting to happen.
Well, Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining us and giving us your perspective on this. That's Steven Pinker, Professor of Psychology at Harvard University.